like a perfect call.
I'll call this meeting of the County Board to order. It's Tuesday, October 21st, 2008. This is a regular meeting. The time is 7:04. Roll call, please.
Anderson.
Here.
Beckett.
Here.
Benzel.
Here.
Betts.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Cowart.
Present.
Dennitz.
Here.
Gladney.
Present.
Gross.
Here.
Hunt. James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Jones. Knott. Kurtz.
Here.
Langenheim.
Here.
McGinty.
Here.
Mosier. Nudo.
Here.
O'Connor. Putman. Richards.
Here.
Sapp.
Here.
Schrader. Wysocki.
Here.
Ammons.
Here.
Weibel.
Here, we have a quorum. For the record, please note that Mr. Knott and Mr. Schrader notified me they would not be making this meeting. Tonight's prayer is by William Wilberforce. Things great have small beginnings. Every downpour is just a raindrop. Every fire is just a spark. Every harvest is just a seed. Every journey is just a step, because without that step there will be no journey. Without that raindrop there will be no shower. Without that seed there can be no harvest. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please note that Ms. Jenny Putman has entered the room. Would the clerk read the notice of the meeting, please?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on October 21st, 2008, 7 p.m. in the Wild Shields Meeting Room, Brookins Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Move adoption. Moved by Mr. Betts, second by Ms. Wysocki. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Under approval of minutes, first of all, we'll seek a motion for resolution number 6736 to amend ordinance number 833 to ordinance number 835. And to amend ordinance number 4 to ordinance number 836. Moved by Mr. Betts, second by Mr. Carter. What happened here is that a couple numbers were reused. Actually, one of them was used earlier this a couple months ago, and one more recently. I plan to put in a plan to reduce and perhaps eliminate this from happening again. Just to let you know. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Seek a motion to amend the minutes of 21st of August 21st, 2008, previously adopted on September 18th, 2008. Moved by Ms. Ammons. Second by Mr. Betts. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Seek approval of the September 18th, 2008 minutes. Moved by Ms. Cowart. Second by Mr. Carter. Discussion. Whoa. Ms. Putnam.
I move to strike the parenthetical phrase that
Give a page,
ends on page 10, that ends the first paragraph under county facilities. The parenthetical phrase is a comment. I believe it is inappropriate in our minutes. It reads, resolution number 6728 should not have been adopted, comma, no document existed, period.
Second.
That's by Mr. Betts. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Motion approval of minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Motion to approve the minutes. Second by Ms. Ammons. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Seek approve the agenda and the addendum.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Betts. Second by Ms. Anderson. Mr. James.
Would it be appropriate to add an item to the agenda at this time?
Depends what it is.
Discussion on the upcoming county board pay issue.
We could put that under new business.
Okay, I didn't know where it would go. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Betts?
point of order. I don't actually believe you can do that because you need to have notice under the Open Meetings Act, and that is a substantive issue. It's not just a substitute. That's a substantive issue.
I'm afraid, Mr. James, I agree with that point of order. The Open Meetings Act requires that you publish your agenda at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting, and this is not an emergency, nor any of the exceptions to that particular requirement.
If I,
Go ahead, Mr. James. Go ahead, Mr. James. Well, actually, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I don't know if our legal saw this, but there was just a case in the paper where Champaign had noticed a meeting, but then the judge allowed because it was pertinent to the issues. It's an upcoming issue. That's the only reason I brought it up at this time, because I would like some clarification on the issue. And if you saw that, not that I'm contesting this, but I would think that you would have some knowledge of that.
I did see that. I haven't seen the entire written opinion yet, but it dealt with an actual issue that was on the agenda. The council had moved to enter into closed session to discuss an item, and I'm sorry, I don't recall which that was, but he tailored that specifically to that particular meeting where the item had been on the agenda in a manner, but not the closed session. So I don't see this particular item on your agenda, and that's why I think that would be a problem for you.
Mr. Jay?
My question would be, if this was just for discussion, what discussing it, we're not making a decision, we just want to discuss it because we can't get it on the agenda.
Unfortunately, Mr. Jay, much as I sympathize with that position, the fact is that the Open Meetings Act requires that you have items on your agenda, even if they are for discussion only. And I can't advise you that it's appropriate to have this discussion at the meeting where it's not on the agenda. I know that your committees are discussing some manners in which items can be brought to the agenda even if they don't go through committee, but your rules don't allow for that yet, and the Open Meetings Act would not allow for that either.
Point of order. We have a motion on the floor to approve the agenda and the addendum. There is no other pending motion. I ask that the chair not allow discussion on anything other than the motion that is present on the floor.
Ms. McGinty, I'll recognize you if Older has something to do with that motion. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Motion carries. The date and time of our next regular meeting is Thursday, November 20th, 2008 at 7 p.m. Note it's back on Thursday. Public participation. Ms. Pat LaRoe.
Hi, my name is Pat LaRoe, and I live in Carroll Addition. I have complained before. I'll continue. I've lived there 45 years. You continue to let new businesses come in. You don't care who comes in. You discriminate my neighborhood. Not only discriminate it, you don't even care what it looks like. It's getting to look like a city dump. You got a J&S Waste on the left side of me. Across the road from me, you have a Max Junkyard. You might as well say it's a junkyard because he hauls dirt in there daily, dumps it, sand in there daily, dumps it. Nobody does anything. It's been reported. Nobody does anything. You know, I can't believe 27 board members cannot do something. I talked to one, and one can only do some. 27 should be able to do something else. The neighborhood's getting to look like a city dump, and I'm not living that away for you or nobody else. And if the new ones can take care of it, find some new ones to take care of it. And I'm going to show you some pictures. They turned me into the EPA over tires. It cost my husband $600 to move tires off a property. We paid it. Why don't you get on to everybody to clean up, not just certain people? And I'm not going to tolerate it if the next time I have to come before an attorney with you. Here are some pictures that was taken. You can keep them because I got more of them. and I want it taken care of. It's like you guys just are blind when you come into a meeting and you can't see anything. I'm not blind in a neighborhood. And I never have been, never will be, and if something's not taken care of, I have to talk to Mr. Carter, one board member out of 27. And I think it's a discrimination in our country to think 27 board members can't get something together, rules, regulations, or something. I tried to get a business, couldn't get it. I have one open 24 hours a day on the next block from me. But yet there's businesses all around me. I couldn't get anything. 27 board members, I'm blind, can't see it. I think 27 board members should come out there once in a while and see what's really going on. Then you would know what's really the county board should take care of. And rules and regulations, because you don't have them. Thank you very much.
Mr. John Farney.
The first week of October, the voter guide came out from our office, and the folks that work in our office, we were very proud of that piece of work. And my coworkers asked me to come here to the board meeting tonight and speak as the bargaining unit employees in the county clerk's office. We really took offense to comments made by the county board chair on WDWS radio when he stated that our work was sloppy and irresponsible. To say that we were upset is an understatement. Quite frankly, we were pissed off. I'm just going to let you know. I still am. First off, the county board chair shouldn't be going on the radio to chastise employees, bargaining unit employees. You go to our supervisor, you go to the department heads, the elected officials, but you don't go on the radio. You've got closed sessions on your agenda tonight to discuss the performance of employees. You don't even give us that respect. We've had enough of it. If you want to see sloppy and irresponsible, look at your nursing home and look at what this board has done under the current chair's administration. That's sloppy and irresponsible.
Mr. Joe Futrell.
My name is Joe Futrell. I live at 1205 South Race. You've seen me before. You'll see me again. I want to thank all of you for putting up with me over this election season. I also was just handed this budget brief by Deb Busey, and we've been talking a lot about the board being more transparent and providing more accessible public information. I think this is a good example of that. All the candidates were given this. You get a lot of bang for your piece of paper here. There's a lot of information, and I'm going to be able to articulate issues much more clearly as a result of having a resource like this. I want to talk about just a couple of issues really quickly. I've talked about the nursing home a lot. I'm going to summarize my position on it. I'm concerned there's no plan B. I'm concerned that the county board is not really talking about the issue, hoping that MPA can sort of dig you guys out of a hole and you can kind of coast through this election in your accountability moment. I think voters need to know more information than that. We need a consistent set of books. We don't have that yet. I know that's coming. It would have been really good to have that before the election, something like this on the nursing home before the election, so that voters know what kind of choices they're going to have to be making. I've made the point again, so I won't belabor it. The only other thing I want to bring up tonight, well, there's two things. First, you can see the kind of anger that exists between the parties. We just saw an example of that right now. That's a problem with having a two-party board. I think there are more constituencies in Champaign County than two. And I represent one of those constituencies. We're a third party. It's hard to start a third party in America, and even in Champaign County. But we're doing it. And one of the reasons we're able to do it is because people aren't so happy with things turning into partisan bickering. They're not happy with the kind of exchanges we just saw. They would like some cooperation and for public officials to get to work around common interest. I think the nursing home is a good example of a common interest. I don't think we should be sniping at each other across party lines. I think we should be working together on this. And I know a lot of board members agree with me on that. And I think the public should understand that too. The only other thing I want to bring up is an item from the Finance Committee agenda, which has to do with mileage allotment for jurors. There's a small increase that the Finance Committee is proposing. I think an increase is good. I think the increase is too small, but I think the fundamental issue is that we're still only paying jurors $10 a day to serve on a jury. And I've worked with people at CU Citizens for Peace and Justice and other people who are concerned about social justice and the way the court system works. And frankly, if you pay that kind of level, you're going to get a certain kind of jury, and I would argue that that jury doesn't really represent the population of Champaign-Urbana, and that we're probably not getting the kind of justice that we need to get for that. I think in this situation where where these jurors are making very important decisions, we want them to represent the people, and I don't think we can nickel and dime them. I know there's lots of things that we're paying for that are very expensive, but frankly, increasing that compensation is not going to break the bank here. We're going to have to dig deep for all kinds of things, but this is a priority, I think, and that's why I'm raising it. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Mark Sheldon.
Well, it's kind of an interesting start to the meeting. You got my letter, and apparently the response to the letter wherein I talk about the fact that we had an agenda item from last month's meeting where the resolution that was voted upon did not exist, and the agreement, which was in theory the subject of the resolution that didn't exist, also didn't exist. And now, I guess we're just going to erase that fact from the minutes and somehow have the minutes reflect that something passed that actually didn't pass. And we've seen plenty of this. Happens in Washington, happens in Springfield, where we get last-minute things thrown on people's desks and told to vote for them, and nobody gets a chance to read it. But this is a little bit beyond that, because what we did was we just voted on something that didn't actually exist at all. There was no words in front of you. There was no words in existence, none whatsoever. And so now the consensus of the board is to say, yeah, it didn't matter that there were no words in existence, that there was no resolution, that there was nothing to vote on. We're just going to kind of vote and pass things without any substance, which is interesting in so many ways. First of all, it's I think, wrong. Second of all, flies in the face of, I went through a whole thing where we actually had legal opinions stating that a resolution that you guys passed, which had all these words and referenced an attachment that had a drawing of how my office was going to be remodeled. That resolution, the attachment didn't really match the words in the resolution, so therefore somehow we could just ignore the attachment. Now what we're saying is, doesn't matter that there was no attachment. This was in January of 2007. It doesn't matter that there was no attachment. In fact, it doesn't matter that there was no resolution whatsoever. We're just going to pass things that we don't even know apparently what you were voting on. Take you back 2 years ago, and we actually had this similar issue with the Neiman parking agreement that came up 2 years ago. And at that time, the resolution that passed, 5621, actually had the number of spaces, the price, the terms of the lease, all of this, and the location of the parking lot. Okay? All of that was in that resolution. The resolution that was given to me by Mr. Weibel to sign, which I did not sign, which didn't exist at the September County Board meeting, has none of these. The resolution that's in your packet right now is a blank check to sign a contract for any amount. It doesn't reference a contract. If you read the resolution, it does not reference any contract. That resolution that you've got that didn't exist a month ago, which I didn't sign a month ago, and you voted on that didn't exist, that resolution, as it existed 3 weeks later when I was asked to sign it, has none of the terms that are in the resolution that was done 2 years ago. None. I think that some people have suggested that this agreement actually did exist. I think the people who have access to public records within the Administrative Services Office and people who have been in discussions with Neiman Foods know that on the night of the county board meeting, there was no agreement on this issue, none. There was no agreement in anybody's hands. It didn't exist, and you can't vote on things, and you can't pass things that don't exist. This has come up before. I mentioned in my letter that we had a contract 2 years ago for Ilias that never was consummated. In fact, nobody can find the contract still. Nobody can find the contract for the expansion of the EMA garage, and we haven't received any of that money from the EMA garage. So now it's part of the overall Ilias contract, or one could argue that, but in the intervening period, we were due money that was not given to us. So my intention is from now on to actually have my staff go over through the agenda and just let you know what is in there or what is referenced that doesn't exist. To me, I am responsible for keeping an accurate account of what is happening at these meetings. And if resolutions that don't exist are passed, we have no idea what anybody did. Somebody could have just typed up a resolution with the different terms of agreements, different dollar amounts, all sorts of things. Because if you don't have something in your hands that we can concretely say, this is what we voted on and this is what we passed, like I said, that's worse than what's going on in Springfield, okay? We made a determination 2 or 3 years ago to actually avoid some of these difficulties by taking some of what were just listed in the agenda, okay? So we would have, in the past, we might just have in the agenda that we appointed somebody to a drainage district in the past, and that's all we did. We didn't actually have a resolution, you know, making that official. Now we do, because that's good practice. It's really good practice. And so now what we're doing is we're taking a step back, and I say you guys are taking a step back if you're actually not only going to suggest that that would be appropriate, but you're going to wipe out any mention of the fact that it happened in the minutes. And it sounds like maybe the intent is to pull this item off of the consent agenda, and not even to vote on it today, in which case we'll still have a resolution out there that while the minutes, you can do whatever you want.
Mr. Betts, it's up to the discretion of the county board chair, and I'll let him continue to speak. Thank you.
And so if you pull that from the agenda, then you're not going to have voted on this, and I guess then we're just going to have a battle over whether or not I'm going to sign something that you guys have never passed. And the fact that it didn't exist means it never passed. So I think the first thing to do is resolve this by hopefully passing it within the consent agenda. I think the resolution is deficient, but I'll sign it if you actually pass it. It's in front of you. And then we can move on from here, and prior to the meeting, on the night of the meeting, if there are deficiencies, things that are missing, contracts that are missing, we have a whole list of contracts that are missing. If contracts in future business are actually missing and we aren't able to locate them, you will know that on the night of the meeting, and resolutions referencing contracts that don't exist, I don't believe, should go forward, because we have to all know what, you have to know what you're voting on, and I have to know what I'm certifying, and the voters need to know, and the citizens of the county need to know that the action you're taking actually is based on some sort of reality, which is a piece of paper in front of you. I believe that's all I have.
Move to suspend the rules.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Betts. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Beckett.
Mr. Chairman? Please sit down.
You need to sit down, Mr. Sheldon.
Oh, sure.
I want to point out to the board the county facility minutes of September 2nd, 2008. Under agenda item Champaign County Neiman Foods lease for county parking recommendation. Motion by Betts to approve the Champaign County Neiman Foods lease for county parking recommendation as set forth by county administrator, seconded by Richards. Mr. Inman explained this will reduce the cost because there is a loss of spaces. We are currently averaging about 40% occupancy. The rent per space will be the same, there will just be 30 less spaces. At that meeting, board members, we actually had the agreement, the same agreement that you see here, except it was the agreement that was in force at the time. We also had a memo from the administrator that described just exactly what the action was that the committee took that night. When this item came forward to the county board agenda, the substance of the item was to approve the county's position, to approve the recommendation that had been made to us by some members of our committee working with our administrator. We did that. The substance of the action is to approve this agreement. The form of the action is the resolution. That's a piece of paper that documents the substance of the action. We have resolutions at every meeting. Sometimes we move to amend resolutions. We change the language of resolutions that are at our table completely. We change them to the reverse of what they say. So we end up voting on something that will be on a piece of paper in the future. That's exactly what happened here. That is exactly what happened. The only reason why we didn't have a piece of paper that night is because my staff member that works with facilities was going to have surgery, and she didn't get it done. And she didn't get it done. That's why. That's all that's going on here. And it's funny because I know the facilities committee members knew exactly what we were doing that night when we voted on this, because none of them said anything when we voted on this at the September board meeting. I wasn't contacted by any other board member asking any question about what this Neiman agreement could be. What this actually did was give the chair the authority to sign an agreement that was consistent with the recommendation that facilities had approved. If there was never an agreement that was consistent with the recommendation that facilities had approved, then the chair would not have authority to sign it, would he? That's what's happening.
Further discussion on this? Mr. Nudo.
This is to Steve, and so maybe Steve can answer this for me. This is coming out now.
It's on the consent agenda.
Yeah, it's on the consent agenda. So if, for example, we see no cure time frame on the default, which I would have a concern on any contract that I wrote, I would like the opportunity to discuss that today and have that go into the document. Is that feasible under what we're talking about here tonight?
You're asking me a parliamentary question. I'll be happy to respond if the parliamentarian doesn't mind.
Yes, sir, I would honor that.
All right. Of course, you take it off the consent agenda and you amend it, just like you could have done in September when you could have asked the question, what is this agreement? What is it we're recommending?
Okay, but we didn't have it in front of us in September.
Well, all you had to do was go online and look at the materials that were there at the facilities meeting, or you could have been at the facilities meeting, or you could have asked any facilities member, right? Just like I do for the committees that you're on and I don't attend, or any other board member.
I appreciate your advice.
Well, I have a comment to make about Mr. Sheldon's remarks. I'd like to read the emails that I was involved, a couple of them between between me and his office. I will not say the names of the people in his office because I don't think they need to be involved. This is to a member of his office. This is on October 9th in the afternoon. Did you give me a copy of Resolution 6728 to sign from September 18th County Board meeting? I know we talked about it, but I do not recall if you gave it to me or not. Pius. That's, of course, the Neiman Parking Agreement. Response, no. This was a resolution that was passed. However, it did not exist. I never received a copy of it. This was not Mr. Sheldon. This was an employee. My response, thanks, employee. I will bring a copy down for Mr. Sheldon to sign. I never did that. Mr. Sheldon implies I signed the resolution and brought it down for him to sign. I never signed the resolution. He knows that it would be illegal for him to sign the resolution before me. I never signed it. What happened was I CC'd another employee in my office, and a digital version was sent down to him because they said they did not have a copy. I never went to his office with a signed copy, and I challenged him to find a witness that I was there on that day or the next day with a signed resolution for him to sign. After that, there was some discussion primarily between a member of the State's Attorney's Office and Mr. Sheldon, and that member of the State's Attorney's Office suggested, why don't you send it through again? My final email State's Attorney, and Mark. How about this solution? The County Board will vote on it again. Mark, I found a Delcourt in Shields room. Is it yours? It's in my office. Pius. Is there any further public participation? Announcements. Mr. Benzel, you have an announcement? Or, well, you're not public.
I wanted to talk about that topic just 1 second.
Go ahead.
Since I've been drug into the...
In microphone, please. Microphone. It's got to be close.
Okay. I was appointed to the evaluation committee. I just want this for clarification. I was appointed to the evaluation team at the August Facilities Committee meeting, and I've had some discussions with Mr. Inman on this, and I guess while everybody's clearing the air and pointing fingers, I just wanted to be clear that the evaluation team met on August 19th for this meeting, and I was never informed of it. I was left off the distribution list to notify about the meeting. So I was not there, and this time it wasn't my fault.
Thank you, Mr. Benzel. Okay, announcements. Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. I have 2 announcements. First, I will soon be presenting a resolution before the county board for a new revenue stream to offset budget deficits in the county coroner's office. I'm working with the state's attorney on the legality of this resolution without any cost to the taxpayers. I want to thank Mr. Mark Medlin for this idea, and when the research is completed, I will present this resolution before the proper committee for consideration. My second announcement is that tomorrow, the Champaign County Farm Bureau will be hosting a Farm Bureau agriculture tour from 11:30 to 4:30, which I am going to attend, and it's for elected officials of Champaign County, and so I invite anyone along to meet with me at the Farm Bureau headquarters and at 11:30 a.m. for a luncheon in the farm area. Look forward to it. It'll be my first trip into the fields. Thank you.
Mr. Benzel.
Thank you. I don't know if any of the board members have noticed or not. I had asked over a year ago, had started kind of my own little push to get committee meetings recorded and placed on the internet so that we could listen to those as needed. I want to thank Mr. Inman for this. It came up recently. We had discussions about it. I noticed that the October meetings are now available on the internet, so you can go listen to other committee meetings if you need to. Thank you.
And I want to thank you, Mr. Benzel, for being so supportive and keeping us attentive to that. Mr. Beckett.
Tomorrow between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, the spire of the county courthouse clock tower will be moved from the ground and put on the top of the old clock tower. So this will complete the superstructure of the clock and bell tower component of the old courthouse and the exterior masonry project. Bring your camera. I think it'll be a nice show. Thanks.
Ms. Wasaki?
I also have, well, it's 2 announcements on the same subject, actually. I've received word that the city of Urbana will be officially dedicating its Lincoln Wayside next Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and this will be on the Busey Bank site. The second of the waysides will be dedicated on November the 1st, which is a Saturday, at the entrance to Homer Lake, and that event will take place at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The purpose of these waysides is to recount activities, people, events that Abraham Lincoln was a party to when he was riding the circuit here in the 1840s and 50s. Eventually, there will be 5 of these waysides throughout the county, including one in front of the courthouse, which will again enhance the story of Lincoln's time here as a lawyer.
Ms. Wasaki, could you identify the location of that Busey Bank, because there are several?
This is the main bank right on Main and Race Street.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carter.
I have a question about the documents again.
About what?
The documents that we're supposed to receive that you're talking about now.
The contract?
any document, not on the internet, but when I read my book, each county board member in here is supposed to get those.
I'm not sure.
I'll find it. I read it. The duty of administrator or whoever's supposed to put the documents out, supposed to have them to us to read.
I'm not sure what documents you're talking about.
Well, I'm going to find it because I
Okay.
know I have it.
Mr. McGinty.
You don't supposed to go on the internet. You're supposed to get them in your package in due time to read the pray before the board.
Oh, you didn't get yours in time, you're saying. Okay, I understand. The meeting was a couple days earlier, so it's unfortunate this time. Mr. McGinty.
The Economic Development Corporation of Champaign County is having its annual meeting next Tuesday, the 28th, from 11:30 to 1 in the Colonnade Room at Memorial Stadium. I encourage all board members to attend. You're all invited. There's been some skepticism over the years about the effectiveness of the EDC. I've served on it now for the last 2 years with Mr. Knott as the other county representative. And I'll tell you, there's been terrific progress made with that board. Under the leadership of Craig Rost last year with the City of Champaign, Lynn Barnes is the president of the board this year. John Dimmitt is the new interim director there. There's been a focus on what it should be, economic development in the cities, in the county, throughout the county. We have a tremendous working board, people putting forth terrific effort to present Champaign County in its most favorable light, to be competitive in retaining businesses, attracting new businesses. It's a show worth seeing. We've gone through an extensive strategic planning process that really bodes well for the future of this organization, and I really encourage you to attend the meeting so that you can catch up on what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGinty. I might point out you do need RSVP for that meeting. Further, Ms. Ames.
I just wanted to clarify when that Economic Development Committee meeting was again.
Tuesday the 28th, I believe.
The 28th, which is next Tuesday from 11:30 till 1.
Further, Mr. Langenheim.
Yes. The Muhammad Aquifer Consortium met on the 16th last week, and I was there representing you. In a nutshell, they're going to appeal for paid membership. They're short of funds, and if the county wants to be represented as a county, it'll cost you 1,000 clams. If you want to send me as an individual, it'll cost 500. The RPC is on their list. I don't know whether they're renewing, but anyway, that's one thing that happened. Another thing, there was a report of the Illinois State Survey has been doing some tests on wells, and they have tested the new water company wells, and they're producing at a rate in excess of what was expected. The water demand survey of the Department of Natural Resources study of the Muhammad Aquifer in parallel to the one the water supply in the northern part of the state has been defunded, as you well know. There's no money available for Part 3, which is the prognosis. The Part 2, which was a summary of current consumption, is completed, and a 400-page report is on file and available on the web.
Thank you, Mr. Langenheim. Since the well is producing more than expected, can we expect an appropriate decrease in our rate?
No. What was that now?
Never mind.
All right. Anyway, those wells are doing very well.
Okay, thank you. Further announcements. Let's move on to consent agenda. Anybody want to pull anything off the consent agenda? Mr. Nudo.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to remove from the consent agenda B1.
What? B?
B as in Baker.
All right. Further changes. Mr. Sapp.
Remove under finance number 7.
Finance number 7.
Move the consent.
Pardon?
Move the consent.
Okay, well, moved by Mr. McGinty, second by Mr. Beckett. Roll call.
Anderson?
Yes.
Beckett?
Yes.
Bensel?
Yes.
Betts?
Yes.
Carter? Cowart? Dinitz?
Yes.
Gladney?
Yes.
Gross? James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Kurtz?
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes.
McGinty?
Yes.
Nudo?
Yes.
Putman? Richards?
Yes.
Sapp?
Yes.
Wysocki?
Yes.
Ammons?
Yes.
Weibel?
Yes, motion carries. We will now have the Nursing Home Board of Directors quarterly report. Dr. Langsford, please.
Good evening. Although the Nursing Home Board has previously met with the Finance Committee and with the Champaign County Board, this is the first formal periodic report of the Champaign County Nursing Home to the Champaign County Board since its inception in May of 2008. During our meeting with the County Board, we recommended the hiring of MPA of St. Louis, Missouri to help with the management of Champaign County Nursing Home. Our Nursing Home Board has met several times since its initial meeting in May 2008, when officers were selected. There were many meetings with the entire board, meetings in which individual members met with county board members, meetings between board members who were looking into various aspects of the nursing home, and visits to the nursing home both as a board and as individual members during the months of May and June. Our board members attended Champaign County Board meetings as part of the audience and were able to hear reports by the county treasurer regarding the financial difficulties the nursing home and the county faced. We heard that further loans to the nursing home would impose risk to the county's ability to meet its other obligations. Through efforts such as these, we were able to satisfy ourselves that the nursing home was performing essential services to the citizens of Champaign County, that the residents of the nursing home appeared satisfied with the home, but that there were significant problems in addition to the financial difficulties that needed prompt correction if the nursing home were to move forward. The chronic nursing shortage and its resulting need to employ agency nurses is one example of the problems faced by the nursing home. Based upon its familiarity with Champaign County Nursing Home and its success with other nursing homes in Illinois, the Nursing Home Board made a recommendation to the Champaign County Board that MPA be hired as administrators of Champaign County Nursing Home. The Champaign County Board, after due deliberation, agreed with this recommendation and hired MPA using a contract negotiated by members of our board, led by Alan Nudo and Peter Tchaikovsky and Deb Busey, County Administrator. Since hiring MPA, our board has moved to a once-monthly schedule and now has a regularly scheduled meeting which is posted on the county website and has agreed upon the format for minutes of its meetings to be posted. MPA has been on site multiple times since July 2008 and has hired Mr. Buffenbarger as the administrator for the nursing home. Mr. Scavato of MPA has presented information to the Champaign County Board and has met with county administrators and board members individually. In the ongoing evaluation of the nursing home, MPA has started systemic reforms, including accounting methodologies to help it better track the finances of the nursing home. After reviewing the services offered by the nursing home's rehabilitation therapy services provider that was in place up until MPA was hired, the Nursing Home Board of Directors authorized Mr. Scavato to renegotiate the contract with ONR, or if not successful, to prepare the RFPs necessary and analyze the responses. The renegotiation was not successful. 5 providers did respond to the RFP, and that included ONR, Infinity, Rehab Care Group, Alliance Rehab, and Endura. The Alliance bid appeared superior to the needs of Champaign County Nursing Home. MPA has hired them as our new contractor of therapy services rehabilitation. The nursing home has stepped up communication between the nursing home and the 2 local hospitals, with a resultant increase in referral of residents. You all have received in the past week a packet of information Mr. Scavato prepared with this, with graphs and numbers, so I won't get into those details. Materials in the form of this report have been provided to you. The trend is towards an increased census in the nursing home and an improved ratio of Medicare, Medicaid, and private pay residents. After the drop in Medicare A and B revenue in the early summer, we now see a trend upwards. MPA was essential in regaining the ability to admit Medicare and Medicaid patients. In addition to these activities, a subcommittee headed by Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy has been active in working on developing a marketing plan for the nursing home. Utilizing its volunteer experts, it would appear that a plan may be in place by January of 2009. We as a board feel that it's essential that the nursing home get the message out there that it's a quality institution, can provide quality care, has great employees, and is one where they should consider strongly placing anyone in their family who has the need of a nursing home. That campaign will be aimed at that message. With the able assistance of Mark Hawley and his subcommittee of our nursing home board, and utilizing his position as head of the nursing program at Parkland College, efforts have started towards expanding the contact between nursing students and the nursing home. The recruitment of new nurses to the nursing home has also been a focus of the committee headed by Mr. Hawley, as well as finding funding to support education of current employees who may qualify as future nurses for the nursing home. Preliminary talks have been held with the Community Foundation regarding funding of educational opportunities for Champaign County nursing home employees through the Grand Victoria Grants Scholarship Program. Carle Foundation has been generous in its help by providing ideas on nurse recruitment. Nursing home administration has been tasked to follow up with efforts in this regard as well. In response to feedback from citizens attending the nursing home board meetings, I have initiated changes in the order of the agenda that will allow public participation earlier in the meetings so that the nursing home board may respond to questions raised as deemed appropriate. The customary time limits on public comments will be followed. In other words, 5 minutes per individual and 6 minutes total public participation. That will start with our next meeting. Members of the Champaign County Board, the Nursing Home Board, and Ms. Busey have met with the Champaign County Chamber of Commerce to answer their questions regarding the nursing home. Members of the Nursing Home Board have also met with news media to improve communications. The Champaign County Nursing Home Board is happy to report that progress has been made for the nursing home in the 5 months since the board's inception. Much remains to be done, but the trend is in the right direction. MPA will need to be given the time and support necessary to make the changes that will enable Champaign County Nursing Home to become a fiscally solvent part of the county while fulfilling its mission for the citizens of Champaign County. It is still very early in the process, and much patience will be necessary, along with hard work, to see the efforts come to fruition. In these unusually difficult economic times, the nursing home will be challenged and tested along with the county itself, but both must persevere. Citizens, employees, residents of the nursing home, union members, and members of the Champaign County Board will all be called upon to make the efforts successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lansford. Ms. Putnam, the question?
I was wondering if Dr. Lansford and my colleagues would like, if you would be gracious enough to accept our questions and if people would like to offer questions.
Is any board member against that? We could have limited discussion.
Sure.
I appreciate your report very much, and I applaud you and your fellow board members for changing the meeting time of the Board of Directors to 6 in the evening. And I also applaud the decision to rearrange the agenda so that participation from the public can come earlier in the meeting. I would also like to invite you to think of taking up Mike Scavato on an offer that he made that because members of the public really want more information, and perhaps in a casual manner, Mr. Scavato offered to arrive at the monthly meetings a half hour, an hour early, and just sit down and engage in a give and take with members of the public. I thought that was very, very gracious of him. Of course, it will be up to you, the board, to formally.
We have agreed to that.
That's terrific. One thing that I would, and I will put this in writing to Mr. Scavato, because the quarterly report is his work product. I would like to see tracking of the number of CNAs, LPNs, and RNs hired per quarter, and then the number who have been retained, that is, who went through the probationary period, survived it or endured it, succeeded through it, and have stayed. I think that that would be a valuable information to have. Administrator Buffenbarger did not always include that information in the monthly meetings that he submitted to the Justice and Social Services Committee meeting, but from time to time, he did make public statements about it, and I think that's a very important statistic for us to have.
Point well taken.
Right. One thing that I'd like to know about, and I don't know if anyone in this room can hazard the guess, but we know Mr. Scavato during the budget hearings in August stated the expectation to issue tax anticipation warrants for the coming fiscal year, and I don't can you hazard a guess as to what the global credit crunch might do regarding what interest rate we might have to pay if we try to borrow money in this means?
That would be beyond my ability to answer. I think Mr. Scavato would be the person to direct that question to, and you do now have a line to him
right.
in terms of information.
Pardon me, Ms. Music could comment on that.
Actually, the treasurer is already talking to local banks about the fact that that is something that we will need to do, and we'll probably have an update at the Finance Committee meeting in November.
Mr. Betts.
Just so that we have clean records on everything, since that issue has come up earlier this evening, I want to formally move that we receive and place on file the Board of Directors report dated October 1st, 2008, and I so move.
Second by Ms. Wysocki. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Further questions for Mr. Langsford? Ms. Amons.
And I think this might be a parliamentary question. On our agendas from October and November, the Nursing Home Board of Directors meeting is on our calendar, but none of the subcommittees that Mr. Langford spoke of have been put either on this calendar, or I'm not sure if it's noticed these subcommittee meetings that he spoke about that are taking place?
I can comment on that. I asked that this is a Champaign County Board calendar, so technically it does not have to include the Board of Directors. I asked that the Board of Directors be put on this, but I've not asked to have any other meetings put on this.
So I guess my question is, would those meetings have to be noticed according to the Open Meetings Act so that people who would want to come to those subcommittees could attend as well? Would those have to be noticed?
Ms., go ahead, please, Susan.
I don't know how they were established, but if the board, I'm assuming, Dr. Lansford, if the board actually created these subcommittees, and they have been created by you to have membership and so on, that you have been noticing the meetings of the subcommittees? Perhaps I'm wrong in that regard.
I wasn't certain that it was an actual appointment of subcommittees. I believe that two board members were going to work together on a particular issue. It wasn't actually appointing and calling it a formal subcommittee, I don't believe. If it was, then we would need to adhere to the Open Meetings Act with regard to their meetings, but I'm not aware that it was that formally established. It was more like a working.
I agree, that's how it was done. If in the future it would be better for the board members for us to do that formally, we can do it. It's not a problem.
Well, I certainly suggest that you don't use the word committee if it's not that.
I'm sorry?
You should not use the word committee if it's not a formal committee.
Okay, thank you.
Please. A little closer to the microphone, please.
If the, yes, thank you. If the persons who are serving on this body are operating and conducting any sort of business with regard to the nursing home, then that should be subject to open meetings. And so I would like for our staff parliamentarian to look into that because, again, I have a real concern about the process of the nursing home board as opposed to the process of the county board in relationship to the nursing home, and any business being conducted thereof should be open to the public, and I'm concerned about how this actually is taking place.
You're not looking for an answer right now, correct?
No, I would like staff to really look into that.
Very good.
Concerned about the Open Meetings Act on that.
Anything else for Dr. Langsford? Okay, thank you, Dr. Langsford.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I did write another question down for Dr. Lansford. I
Make it
don't know if
quick.
he can do that, but my concern is that I receive phone calls from staff of the nursing home complaining about grievance process. Is the board at all participating in any process for the employees?
No.
I can answer. The Board of Directors is not. I can tell you that I am. Moving on to committee reports. Justice and Social Services, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All of our action items were on the consent agenda, so we do not have anything to bring forward.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. County Facilities, Mr. Beckett.
County Facilities recommends adoption of resolution number 6728 approving Neiman Foods parking agreement with Champaign County, and I so move.
Second. Second by Mr. James. Is there discussion? Mr. James.
I listened to all the discussion about the resolution and the matter, and again, I'm going to just say it like it is. I'm a simple country boy at times. The intent when I was in that meeting and I heard all that discussion, that was the reasoning I had was that this contract was going to be renewed. Basically, the resolution had been established before. A lot of this maneuvering, as I like to call it, I think it does have some substance because we do need to be correct. But when I had been in that committee and listened to all that, I think I understood it fairly well. And I do know that even I, when I do work for different entities or what have you, that I'm not able to always have the proper paperwork in place until after, discussion has ensued and we come up with a plan. And in this case, we were changing some numbers. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Further comment, Mr. Nudo.
Yes, on page 46, clause 12, in the event the lessee defaults pursuant to the terms of this lease, upon written notice from the lessor to lessee, this lease may be terminated, and lessor may maintain its claim for damages in the event, in such event, the lessee shall immediately vacate the leased premises. In addition, in the event of the lessee's default, lessor shall be entitled to any and all other remedies at law and in equity, and shall include lessor's right to enforce against lessee its claim for rent owed pursuant to this lease and other charges, so on and so forth. Typically, in a lease, there's a cure time that is allowed the lessee to take care of any such defaults. Usually, Steve, 20 business days, something that would allow the lessee to cure the problem. And I think that's something that we should enter back into negotiations with them, because this is pretty onerous in terms of their ability to kick you out immediately.
Mr. Beckett?
These are parking spaces. Parking spaces for our employees at $20 a month per space. We've had an ongoing business relationship with these folks. We've made all our payments. We're going to continue to make all our payments. I can't help but think, Mr. Nudo, that you have fallen into the trap. Because there's nothing wrong with this agreement. It passed our state's attorney before. And I see no reason not to continue our existing business relationship with these folks. I don't think, well, enough said.
Steve?
Mr. Noodle, please direct your comments towards the chair.
Yeah, I don't have any objection to what you're saying there, Steve, except that if, in fact, let's just take an example. If somebody would like to purchase a portion of that parking lot and put a building on it, we would be out.
Mr. Beckett?
Mr. Nudo, I can take any business agreement that you have ever entered into and find something wrong with it. That's my job, right? I went to law school to do that. There's nothing wrong with this agreement.
Mr. Chair.
Ms.
I
go ahead,
can
Susan.
point out in answer to Mr. Nudo's question on that particular issue that it specifically says the lease agreement can be canceled by either party with 60 days prior written notice. So I think that the situation that Mr. Nudo has contemplated is addressed by the lease, because in the situation where they may want to use the space for another purpose, they do have to give us notice.
Not in the case of default.
Further discussion, Mr. Betts?
Suggesting that the county would default?
That's what
Yes.
that's
Not likely. I think that we want to provide spaces.
Okay.
I'd like to point out that my name is misspelled, for the record.
Yes, it is.
Well, we can't pass this then.
I'm not sure how I can handle that. Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Again.
That's all for facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Beckett. Policy personnel and appointments. Mr. Betts.
Hi. Okay, good evening. I move adoption of ordinance number 837, establishing a single administrator system and prescribing the duties, powers, and responsibilities of the county administrator, and I so move.
Thank you, Mr. McGinty. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, just for the purposes of the record, I would point out that there was a lot of work went into this by the subcommittee, and because of the nature of this particular resolution, I would ask that the chair, at its discretion, call the roll.
I'm willing to do that. Anybody else interested? Fair enough. Let's do it. Roll call.
Anderson,
I'm sorry, can you tell me what we're voting on?
The ordinance established a single administrator. Single administrator. Top of page 2 of your agenda.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Beckett,
Yes.
Benzel, Betts,
Yes.
Carter, Cowart, Dennett,
Yes.
Gladney,
Yes.
Gross, James,
Oh.
Jay,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Langenheim,
Yes.
McGinty,
Yes.
Nudo, Putman, Richards,
Yes.
Sapp, Wysocki, Ammons, Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
Next is I move the adoption of Resolution 6747, recognizing the service of County Board Member Carrie Millen. And I so move.
Second by Ms. Ammons. I point out this did not go through committee, came directly to the board. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. Finance, Mr. McGinty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finance Committee recommends adoption of Resolution Number 6748, Payment of Claims Authorization, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Mr. Betts. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries.
Finance Committee recommends adoption of Resolution Number 6749, Purchases Not Following Purchasing Policy, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Mr. Betts. Discussion? Ms. Ammons.
Mr. Chair, just for purchases not following procedure, we had received, or shall I say more correctly, that I read in the newspaper of the process of us awarding. Is this the same thing, or is this just bills that we accumulate each month? I had somebody ask me this question. So
I'm not sure. What did you read in the newspaper? This concerned the
auditors
about the carpeting?
Yes.
That item's not come to us
That
yet.
did not come to us,
Yes.
correct? Thank you, sir.
Further discussion? See none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Third item, Finance Committee recommends adoption of Resolution Number 6750, an emergency budget amendment for $122,548. The fund appropriated in fiscal year 2006. The project was completed in fiscal year 2008, and I so move.
Second by Ms. Cowart. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, roll call. Roll call.
Anderson.
Thank you.
Yes.
Beckett.
Yes.
Benzel.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter. Cowart. Dennett. Gladney.
Yes.
Gross. James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones. Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
McGinty.
Yes.
Nudo.
Yes.
Putman.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Sapp.
Yes.
Wysocki.
Yes.
Ammons.
Yes.
Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
Item number 4, the Finance Committee recommends adoption of Resolution Number 6751, increasing the juror mileage rate, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion? Ms. Putnam.
This is a matter whose discussion began, at least this year, in the Justice and Social Services Committee, and under Chair Anderson's leadership, we unanimously, I believe it was unanimously, endorsed this concept. We didn't set a dollar or cent value on the mileage. We just...
Yeah. Yes, we did. 45 cents.
Suggested 45 cents.
And I wasn't able to follow exactly how the discussion unfolded in the Finance Committee, but I think everyone would like to know what the total will be needed to be added to the budget to make this happen, and just some of the discussion. But before I hear from Mr. McGinty or other people who had engaged in that discussion in Finance, I just want to say that this is a tiny step, in my opinion, in the right direction, and I applaud it. As members of the public have noted, we want to promote and encourage jury service. And I know that under, I think, Judge DeFanis and Chair Weibel's, with their blessing, there will be an initiative that unfolds that will help promote public understanding, starting in the schools and building up so that more people understand our need to respond positively to that summons. Mr. Beckett, was this the 4th or 5th year that the League of Women Voters and Trial Advocacy class collaborate on that court watching report? And I hope by next May, when the next report is released, there will be a broad community steering committee, blue ribbon committee, whatever it's going to be called, that will launch
a wonderful program to help more people understand why everyone needs to say yes when they, or should, to the extent possible, say yes when they receive this summons. And of course, I think Judge Stefanis would say he, shrinks to think that we would pay a juror $10 a day for her or his participation as a juror. And where I think the federal courts pay more, where the IRS, I think, reimburses mileage at 50 cents per mile. Well, it's better to do something than to do nothing. So I applaud this. But now that I've expressed my positive feelings, I would like to hear more about the total dollars needed and what other folks have to say about this.
The total dollars were $17,052 in fiscal year 2009's budget, and based on the Finance Committee's action, that amount is included in the fiscal year 2009 budget that you received and placed on file this evening.
And Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is coming out of our contingency fund.
Right. The contingent fund had been budgeted in 2009 at about $227,000, and with this change, it's now at $210,000.
Ms. Gross.
One part of me wants to vote no on this, and it's not because we're raising it. I think that our ethics here are in question. And the reason I think so is that we are quite willing to pay the federal mileage rate for our own staff. We're quite willing to pay the federal mileage rate, which I believe is what, 58.5 cents, for any of our consultants or our outside attorneys or any special folks that we need to testify. And we're willing to pay ourselves as county board members after the election $100 a day. And then we say to this vital, very important segment of our court system, you're only worth $10 a day, and we can come up with only 30 cents a mile for you. That is insulting. And while I like the idea of raising that rate, I think I'll vote no just because it's an insulting way to treat our jurors.
Ms. Ammons.
I actually asked this question as well as we came from Justice requesting 45 cents, which I thought was also small compared to what we already pay as far as other areas for mileage. And also, to me, it also speaks to the priority of the county. I believe that if any of us in this room has to actually be the defendant and have a person come very disgruntled to lose a whole day's work for $10 a day trying to do their civic duty, we would quite understand this matter, I think, a little better. And so, as Ms. Gross just noted, I think it's important actually that we put these finances in the right place. And I don't quite understand, we didn't get any real rhyme or reason as to why we couldn't do 45 cents, which I think is a pence, because we didn't even deal with the daily rate. Because of course we don't have it in the budget. I am very cautious, as Ms. Gross noted, to vote for statues and monuments and things of that nature and not take care of the citizens who have to participate in this process, and certainly the poor people that have to go through it. And so I think that this is a priority resolution that really needs to be reworked.
Mr. Langenheim.
I move to amend to raise the 30-cent item to 45 cents.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Ammons. Discussion. Mr. James.
Well, I sat in on that committee, and I strongly believe with some of the comments that, the going rate, whatever the IRS rate is, and I said that in committee, that I feel like that is fair. The other issue of the pay, and I know I'm going to get some looks, but I don't care what you pay anybody. If your heart and soul is in it, we've got plenty of people in government that are corrupt no matter what we pay them. I'm afraid that we've got to do a civic duty sometime. We got to do what's right. Paying them mileage and paying them what we are, granted, is not the best thing, but that's not a job. It's a duty for all of us to serve and be fair. I'm afraid that someday I'm going to be listening to an argument that let's start paying kids in high school because they feel like they need some type of stipends for going to school all day. And we're debating something the state needs to look at, not us. I think what we're doing with the mileage is more than fair if we could get it up some, but the Finance Committee came up with that. They had their reasons, so I'm going to support it at this point.
Mr. Kurtz.
In all fairness, I would resolve that we all take 30 cents a mile, and I'd be willing to cut back from 58 cents a mile to 30 cents a mile.
That's not the topic of the floor, sorry. Mr. McGinty.
Just knowing Ms. Busey, I'm guessing that she's already done the back of the napkin calculation on what this is going to cost us if we make this change. Have you?
It would be an additional $25,578.
So approximately increase about 42,000 change?
42,630 total.
Ms. Wysocki.
I think it might be beneficial for members of the board to understand how we got to the 30 cents. And if I remember the finance meeting correctly, you were the one who offered the that figure.
I made that amendment, that's correct.
And could you, for everybody's benefit, do the calculations as to how we got, how you proposed that?
Well, I felt that, first I wanted to get it out of committee. I felt that 45 cents would not get out of committee. I figured that there would be possibility of further discussion here, and the whole entire board could vote as they please. And I'm...
Gas prices.
I based on the price of gasoline, that's correct. That at 30 cents a mile, you're approximately paying for gas at about $4.50 a gallon, roughly. If you're averaging 15 miles per gallon, it's again all just top-of-the-head calculations. So, what it comes down to is that at 30 cents a mile, you're roughly paying for the gas on your average vehicle. Now, if you have a Hummer, forget about it. Of course, it depends on the price of gas, but that was my calculation. Ms. Amons.
Mr. Chair, can we call for a roll call vote on the motion that's on the floor?
We can do that. If we need two more people to do that, Mr. McGinty. Okay. We'll have a roll call. Mr. McGinty.
I just wanted to ask for another step down the road there, Deb. So that would leave our contingent fund at what approximate number?
Between 185 and 190,000.
After this addition, after going to 45 cents.
If you go to 45 cents. Right now it's at 210,000 and some change.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nudo.
Yeah, I think part and parcel with this discussion that we had in finance on this particular subject, Deb presented the 2009 finance situation, and it's tenuous at best. And I think if you take a look at what you are hearing from retailers of the bottom falling out of their sales in the last couple of months, we won't know for another quarter what the third quarter produced. And the question I have is, when do we start to stop? We are already in 30% of our contingency fund before the year starts. Where do we start to stop and say, hey, we have got to get real about this thing? And I'm not saying that Carol's actions are in the right at the heart of the matter, but we have to say we're going to draw the line somewhere.
Mr. Carter.
I'm wondering about the people that is not as rich as some of us that would be called to serve on jury duty. Everybody don't make, we see a lot of people that make minimum wage still should be able to serve on your court duty. Now, you going to ask them to volunteer? I think you need to look at this and see a way we can come up with something that's going to benefit all our people, just not some. Some of us probably could volunteer totally with the money we make, but some can't. You have people just barely can pay their room rent. So I wish you consider that.
Mr. Sapp.
I supported the 45 cents out of committee to send it to finance to look at. I think finance got it and did a review and felt that we could do the 30 cents. That's what I'll support tonight. What surprises me even more is we talk about finance and what's out there is that, I hear one board member tonight say they're willing to take 30 cents for the entire board. Another board member commented about the $100 that only half the board's going to get, yet we try and talk about it. We try and bring it up, and we can't even get it on the agenda to discuss how we can give back to maybe look at some of these alternatives. But if you're looking at spending money and paying money, we also have to look at cutting expenses, yet we can't even get that on the agenda after asking for a couple months to have it considered. So,
I'm sorry, Mr. Sapp. Did you ask me to put that on the agenda?
we've asked it to be looked at different committee levels, and we can't figure out which committee to send it to. It's been discussion amongst more board members. I've not come specifically to you to discuss
that's
it.
about that clarification.
Tonight, we tried to make an amendment to have it discussed,
And we'll be working on that, too.
awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Dunnins.
I would remind my colleagues that on the consent agenda tonight were 6 resolutions to loan money from different funds so that the general corporate fund would not have to issue tax anticipation warrants. So this is not a rosy picture for the '09 budget. I really think you need to think about this. There's a small increase. I think we need to live with it.
Ms. Putnam.
While members are considering how to vote, I'd like to tell you that probably more significant in the bread and butter issue for a juror, more important than the mileage reimbursement, is the per diem compensation.
Might add that's not discussion of the, that's not on the agenda. We're not discussing that, so it's not relevant to the motion on the floor.
Other ideas being pursued to make it easier to people to respond to that summons. And I think you'll be pleased when those ideas are brought forward.
Further discussion. Ms. Busey, could you tell me, is the amount we had in our contingency, is that standard amount?
No, we started this fiscal year placing in the contingent fund for fiscal year '09 our potential obligation if Carl should win its property tax case, and we would have to repay them property taxes that have been collected. And that amount is $248,000. And part of the strategy for the '09 budget was to make sure that we budgeted that in contingent in case we're faced with that repayment sometime in the next fiscal year.
So our contingency budget is less than normal?
No, normally, our goal for a contingent budget is at least $100,000.
Okay.
We have not always achieved
Okay.
that in recent fiscal years. But I mean, aside from the contingency, and you all have reports on it, but there are a number of things that are not in the fiscal year '09 budget because of the current financial situation.
Further discussion. Mr. Carter.
I think it would be appropriate too. You could use some of this money that they collect from the dope dealers that you can't never figure out where it all
I
goes.
think the sheriff gets that, doesn't he?
It put back in the court system
Actually,
to defray some of these costs.
Ms. McGrath, can you respond to Mr. Carter?
I can because I do those cases. By statute, it's mandated that the monies either go to the sheriff's office, the state's attorney's office, or in some cases, a small portion to the circuit clerk's office. And it also can go to court services, and those, I think we've only had one case for them this year, but they can get a cut as well. But we have to spend the money the way the statute provides.
Now, that's because all of these boxes, limousines that be sold, come on now, something, and you never know where it all goes. So you got to tell O'Rourke something better than that.
Well, the only thing I can tell you, Mr. Carter, is we haven't had a limousine. Most of the cars that we forfeited this year, I think the sheriff would agree with this assessment, are what we would colloquially call junkers. We did have one good vehicle, but unfortunately, it's not as nice as what you see on TV. But again, those are monies that are specifically designated to certain drug education programs and other things that the sheriff has to do, and other things in probation.
Ms. Cowart.
We don't pay our jurors out of the budget for the Justice Department.
Juror fees come out of the general corporate fund, which all of the Justice Department budgets are also in the general corporate fund.
Microphone.
Part of the circuit court's budget. So when you increase the juror fees, you increase a line item in the circuit court's budget. That's who pays them.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out once again, we're seeking to spend money that the county does not have, and people seem to disregard the budget situation we're in. But I'd like to suggest that if we're bent on increasing this rate, I would prefer that we increase it to 30 cents this year and then wait until next year and see if our budget is better before we increase it another 15 cents. I think that would be a reasonable compromise.
Remember, the motion is to increase the amount from 30 cents to 45 cents per mile. Mr. Langenheim.
2 observations. Jury duty is in a sense compulsory in a way. You have to be excused from it. We bring people in against their will and tell them they have to serve the county. We pay them the lowest mileage rate we pay, I believe. Is that correct? It seems to me that needs to be addressed. Why should it be 30 cents for jurors and 45 cents or 53 cents or whatever it is for contractors, consultants? I don't know what I get for my 4 miles to come to this meeting, but it should be uniform. We should think about that. There's a matter of fairness here.
Okay, I'd like to have a vote on this. Further discussion? Mr. Kurtz?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Mr. Jones. I think we vote on the 30 cents tonight.
Actually,
Can't talk about that.
I let him go, that was a little bit off topic. We're talking about the motion to amend it to 45 cents.
Okay.
30 to 45 cents.
That's what we're talking about.
What's that?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, you're talking about going from doing it later,
No,
though. We're talking about doing 30 to 45 now.
I'm talking about the compromise of 45 cents next year and 30 cents
I'm talking
today.
about the vote tonight. The compromise next year is irrelevant.
Okay, then I will vote no on the 45
Okay,
cents.
thank you. Mr. Nudo.
Mr. McGinty or maybe Deb Busey could give the numbers on what other counties, collar counties, are doing for jury duty.
It's generally $10 a day and 10 to 15 cents a mile. A couple other counties are also looking at the issue, but there was a report that was provided to the Finance Committee, and that was basically the information that was provided.
Okay, I'd like to call a roll call, please.
Take the motion, brother.
Motion is to change the mileage rate from 30 cents to 45 cents per mile. Increase of 15 cents.
It's an amendment.
It's amendment, though. It's amendment. This is amendment.
Voting on the amendment only.
Amendment only, not the main motion. Roll call.
Anderson.
No.
Beckett.
No.
Benzel.
No.
Betts.
No.
Carter.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
Dennett.
No.
Gladney.
No.
Gross. James.
No.
Jay.
No.
Jones.
No.
Kurtz.
No.
Langenheim.
Yes.
McGinty.
No.
Nudo.
No.
Putman.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Sapp.
No.
Wysocki.
No.
Ammons.
Yes.
Weibel.
No, motion fails. We're back to the main motion. Further discussion. Roll call vote on this? Let's go with the roll call vote. Call the roll.
Anderson.
Yes.
Beckett.
Yes.
Benzel. Betts.
Yes.
Carter.
I tried, yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
Dennett.
Yes.
Gladney.
Yes.
Gross. James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones. Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
No.
McGinty.
Yes.
Nudo.
Yes.
Putman.
Yes.
Richards.
No.
Sapp.
Yes.
Wysocki. Ammons.
No.
Weibel.
Yes. Motion carries. Instead of Mr. Jones, Mr. Kurtz, I ruled you out of order because you were talking about if you started at 30 cents. But we're talking about if it was at 45 cents. That's why I consider you out of order. You understand that? Okay, moving on. Mr. McGinty.
Item number 5, the Finance Committee recommends adoption of Resolution number 6752, authorizing renewal of a loan from the General Corporate Fund to the Nursing Home Fund, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Betts. Discussion. Mr. McGinty.
I thought it would be useful just to note the discussion briefly at Finance Committee about this particular issue. It was a spirited discussion, and the general consensus in a nutshell from the majority that voted for authorizing this renewal of the loan came from the angle of basically accountability, I would say. Holding the nursing home accountable to remind them that they owe general corporate fund this money. What is interesting about this particular case is that that goes against what the Administrator of Finance and the Treasurer recommended to the committee. I think there was across the board understanding of each other's views on this, because from an accounting standpoint, I think it was the administrator and the treasurer's thought that it wasn't truly an accurate reflection of where we stand with the finances at the nursing home, in that this has turned into a grant. You know, I think in some people's views that this is the third year of renewing, second year of renewing this 12-month loan. And but the reasoning behind the holding accountable certainly makes sense from a historical standpoint. There was discussion about making sure that the next board is reminded of the pains that this has been to everyone as we have helped the nursing home out of financial difficulty, or hopefully will become out of financial difficulty. So from a standpoint of what was discussed at Finance, that's the reasoning why we are at the renewal of a loan rather than acknowledging this as a grant.
Mr. James?
Is this a roll call vote?
No.
Can I call for a roll call?
You can call for a roll call vote. We need 2 more people, though. Okay, we have 3. Ms. Amons, Mr. Betts. Further discussion? Roll call.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beckett,
Yes.
Benzel, Betts,
Yes.
Carter,
No.
Cowart,
No.
Dennett,
Yes.
Gladney,
Yes.
Gross, James,
No.
Jay,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Langenheim,
Yes.
McGinty,
Yes.
Nudo, Putman,
Yes.
Richards,
Yes.
Sapp,
Yes.
Wysocki, Ammons, Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
From the consent agenda, item number 7, the Finance Committee recommends adoption of resolution number 6759, a budget amendment for $177,205 to pay for the remainder of expenses due to the ILEAS Training Center project, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion. Mr. Sapp.
I had requested that this be removed before I realized that one of my colleagues had answered the question that I had, and he shared with me, so I do not have that question anymore, and I apologize for that.
No problem. Further discussion. See none, all in favor? Let's need a roll call. That's right.
Anderson, Anderson,
Yes.
Beckett, Benzel, Betts, Carter, Cowart,
Yes.
Dennett,
Yes.
Gladney,
Yes.
Gross, James,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Langenheim,
Yes.
McGinty,
Yes.
Nudo, Putman,
Yes.
Richards,
Yes.
Sapp, Wysocki, Ammons,
Yes.
Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
And finally, not on the agenda, but just making note of, we accepted and placed the '09 budget on file from the consent agenda. There is a full copy. Remember, we used to get a monstrous amount of paper, a lot of numbers, all of that every year. There's a full copy of that budget up at the front desk, but also on the web, on the county's website. But also, and Joe, I appreciate out of the public noting the attempt to be as transparent as possible as we've done the last several years, and also making this budget brief, small. But there's also, for people who I forgot my reading glasses, there's a large version in case anyone needs it of the same material. But this is a good overview in a nutshell and readable about the goals that we had last year, the goals that we worked on, where every dollar was spent The gory details, again, on the web in the large budget document. Administrator Busey deserves a tremendous amount of support for every year improving the readability and transparency of this budget, and I'm just very thankful for your efforts in this area.
I might add that the final budget will be on a CD for most county board members unless you request you want the...
Yes, sorry, it's already, this version is already on CD at Deb's desk as well.
Okay.
And that is all from Finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGinty. Highway and Transportation, Ms. Cowart.
Okay, the Highway and Transportation Committee has nothing for the board consideration. Everything is on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Cowart. And Ms. Wysocki for Environment and Land Use.
Ditto,
Thank
nothing
you.
new.
Okay, we'll go with other business. We're going to have 3 closed sessions. The order of the closed sessions will be B, C, and A. So, Ms. Gross.
I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 to consider collective negotiating matters between Champaign County and its employees or their representatives. I further move that the following individuals remain present: the county's legal counsel, county administrators, the sheriff or his designee, and the recording secretary.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Wysocki. Roll call.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beckett,
Yes.
Benzel, Betts,
Yes.
Carter, Cowart, Dennett,
Yes.
Gladney,
Yes.
Gross,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jones, Kurtz,
Yes.
Langenheim, McGinty,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes?
Putman, Richards, Sapp, Wysocki, Ammons, Weibel.
Yes.